Hello students, welcome back to my class. In my previous session, I had given you the introduction of Shashi Deshpande and also the introduction to the story. And I had told you that in this session, we'll be discussing the story itself. So first of all, we will begin the discussion by discussing the title, My Beloved Charioteer. And also, who is this beloved charioteer? Because there are three characters in this, and we have to also find out who is the beloved charioteer. Now, do you know the meaning of charioteer? Chariot किसे कहते हैं? Chariot होता है रथ. And when we think about chariots, suddenly a scene of Mahabharata or the fight between Kauravas and Pandavas, it comes to our mind. जब अपन करते हैं चैरियट या रथ वगैरह की जब बात आती है तो हमको महाभारत का युद्ध, कुरुक्षेत्र का युद्ध याद आ जाता है. नाउ चैरियटियर इज़ द पर्सन हु ड्राइव्स अ चैरियट. जैसे बस ड्राइव करने वाले को हम ड्राइवर कहते हैं, बस ड्राइवर, और प्लेन ड्राइव करने वाले को वी कॉल दैट पर्सन अ पायलट. So similarly, the person who drives the chariot is called a charioteer. Now the role of the charioteer is very important in the battlefield. युद्ध में सारथी, charioteer होता है सारथी. सारथी का रोल बहुत important होता है. He can make you win the war or lose the war or the battle. है ना? He helps you to win the battle or lose the battle. If he is very efficient and skillful, he can help you to win the battle. And if you remember, who is the famous charioteer? अगर हम देखें महाभारत का फेमस चैरिटियर या सारथी कौन था? दैट वॉज लॉर्ड कृष्ण. कृष्ण भगवान थे. सो हियर इन दिस स्टोरी द टाइटल सजेस्ट्स द चैरिटियर लॉर्ड कृष्ण. नाउ हियर among these three characters, Aji, Aarti and Preeti, as I have told you, Aji is the grandmother, Aarti is her daughter, and Preeti is Aarti's daughter, that is Aji's granddaughter. Though Preeti does not occupy a major portion of the story, but she has been given a very little space, yet she turns out to be the central figure in the story. Now this beloved charioteer is actually based on Preeti. Though Preeti has a very small role to play, if you see, she has a very insignificant role to play. But when we look at the whole picture or look at the whole story, she is central to the story. Her grandmother rightly calls her my beloved charioteer. Shashi Deshpande is indirectly referring to the beloved charioteer, Lord Krishna from Mahabharata, Book 4, who with his skill takes in hand the great engine of hope and gave the mankind and Arjun an invaluable inspirational message in the form of Gita. जो महाभारत में जो ये उपदेश हैं which Lord Krishna gives to Arjun, all these teachings of life, they are collected in the form of the Gita. गीता वो संदेश है, वो उपदेश है जो कि श्री कृष्ण ने अर्जुन को कुरुक्षेत्र के युद्ध में दिया था. So if Shri Krishna had not given given that advice to Arjun, maybe Arjun would not have fought the war or he would not have won the battle or the war. So here charioteer, that is Lord Krishna, plays a very important role. And in this story, Preeti is like Lord Krishna. To her grandmother, she is like Lord Krishna, who drives Arjun's chariot in the Mahabharata and motivates him to discharge his duty in the battlefield. In other words, she plays a similar role in the story and motivates her grandmother to discharge her duty to bring her daughter means that is Aarti, out of the gloom, or you can say out of the depression after she has been widowed. Now, here the battlefield. What is the battlefield of Aji or grandmother? The battlefield is itself the battle of life. जिंदगी की जो बैटल है, जीवन का जो युद्ध है, उसको फेस करने के लिए now this Preeti, she plays a pivotal role. It is Preeti who imparts a new meaning to the dull and the flat life of grandmother. Now, I hope you have read the story, because I can't teach you the whole story line by line, as I have told you that I have posted that story on WhatsApp group, and I hope you have studied or you can read the story fully. So in this story, if you see that the life of Aji or grandmother has totally changed after the arrival of Preeti and Aarti, because Preeti actually she imparts a new meaning to the dull and flat life of grandmother. She affectionately calls her grandmother Aji, and she becomes a source of happiness for her grandmother. Now, grandmother feels very happy in her company. She becomes a source of happiness, and they are shown to have very intimate relationship and enjoy life in each other's company. Now, if you look at the opening lines or the opening of the story, it begins with, I smile as I hear at last the sounds I'm waiting for, a rush of footsteps, the slam of the bathroom door, and then bare feet running towards me. Now, the beginning of the story opens with the conversation of Preeti and Aji. So, she's the one who brings happiness to the grandmother. And the grandmother says that they form a conspiratorial team that excludes Aarti. Now, Aarti is not included in their company. Aarti leads a secluded life. The grandmother says that when she is not at home, she is Preeti. When she is not at home, the grandmother feels that she is missing something. As the writer writes, when she is gone, silence settles on the house, and a silence that will not lift till she returns. That when Preeti goes to school, the house falls under silence. So Preeti does not like to sleep in her mother's room, and she prefers the company of her grandmother. That Preeti loves her grandmother more than that of her, more than her mother Aarti, because Aarti does not pay any attention to her, and she is lost in her own world of depression. She actually remains very recluse and secluded from the company of Aji and Preeti. So Preeti does not like to spend her time in her mother's room, and she prefers the company of her grandmother. And as you see, grandmother also tells her the stories, and she has changed the life of the grandmother. And she sees the photograph of her grandfather and asks her grandmother innocently, "Who is he? And what was he of yours?" So this is a big question. What was he of yours? So the relationship between Aji and her husband, it comes into being. And then she also inspires her grandmother to do something to shake her daughter out of a stupor caused by the unnatural death of her husband. Now she is like a motivating force. Charioteer क्यों कहा है, सारथी क्यों कहा है? Like Krishna motivated Arjun to fulfill his duties. Similarly, now here Preeti is motivating the grandmother to fulfill her duties. And then what is the duty? First of all, she has a duty towards her granddaughter, towards her daughter Aarti, and because of her, actually, She shakes her daughter out of the stupor caused by the unnatural death of her husband. When Aarti becomes a widow, she goes into depression, and it is very difficult for her to come out of it. And it is actually Aji who pulls her out. But the daughter takes refuge in her father's room, that is Aarti. Instead of connecting with her mother, she takes refuge in her father's room. And the grandmother realizes that if my daughter is so empty that she can hate people who are happy, the fault is to some extent mine. Now actually Aarti is so disturbed that when her mother tells her to go and dress up and go out and just go to the park to refresh herself, she says that when I go to the park, I see happy couples and I feel so jealous of them. I feel like murdering them. I feel like killing them. That is, she is become so stone-hearted that she cannot tolerate happy people. So for this, it is a pain to the grandmother, that is Aji, that she feels that if her daughter is so empty that she cannot love the people who are happy, then she feels that Aji is responsible to some extent for her behavior. Since the mother is unable to bear the isolation from her daughter, she makes an attempt to communicate to her grown-up yet immature daughter by confronting her with the reality of her own situation vis-a-vis her father. Now if you see over here, Aarti is so engrossed in her own thoughts and in the memories of her father and her husband that she does not relate to her mother. Now mother is unable to bear this isolation. This mother is feeling very, very bad just because she cannot communicate to Aarti. And she also wants to communicate to Aarti just because of Preeti, because she loves Preeti so much and she wants Aarti to interact with Preeti and look after Preeti and love Preeti. So this is how Preeti inspires Aji to confront her own daughter Aarti. And then she tells her the reality of her husband to her daughter. Like her daughter feels that her father was a great person, he was a very good person, but then she says that he was your father, but what was he of mine? Like Aarti is grieving over the death of her own husband. But Aji, her husband has also died, but she does not grieve that much over her husband because she had led a very suffocated life and she rather feels as if she has been freed from that oppression. So she said that he was your father, but what was he of mine? I lived with him for 25 years. I know he didn't like unstringed beans and hated grit in his rice. I know he liked his tea boiling hot and his bath water lukewarm. And he hated tears. And so, when your baby brothers died, I wept alone and in secret. You can imagine that the relationship between the husband and wife was so mundane and it was so perfunctory that they did not even mourn the death of their sons together. So when your baby brothers died, I wept alone and in secret. I combed my hair before he woke up because he did not like to see women with untidy, loosened hair. I scarcely dared to breathe. I was so terrified of disturbing him. Just imagine, she was so terrified of him that she did not even have the courage to breathe in front of him. So he said that she had led a very oppressed and suffocating life with her husband, and after the death of her husband, she rather feels freed. She has a kind of freedom after the death of her husband. So when she discloses the oppression she has experienced throughout her life, this opens her daughter's eyes to the true character of her father. That is, it opens the true nature of her father to Aarti, which results in the reconciliation of the daughter with her mother. The realization that it is inescapable feminine destiny to suffer secretly for the sake of material and moral security is brought home to आरती. आरती को तब पता लगता है कि कैसे this this feminine destiny is inescapable, इससे बचा नहीं जा सकता है, to suffer secretly for the sake of material and moral security. That is what is the compulsion of the wife, especially the wife who is not working, who is dependent on the husband. So she is so dependent on the husband that she has to realize that she has to sacrifice something for that moral and material security that she gets from the marriage. Thus, Shashi Deshpande in the story not only stresses upon the darker experiences of a woman's life, but also emphasizes the significance of the mother's role in motivating a daughter to live and rise above the debasing sentimentality. तो इसके थ्रू ये बता रही है शशि देशपांडे कि विमेन की लाइफ सिर्फ डार्कर एक्सपीरियंसेस नहीं बता रही है कि औरत की ज़िंदगी में बहुत सारी ऐसी अनकही परेशानियाँ होती हैं, बट शी ऑल्सो एम्फसाइजेज द रोल ऑफ द मदर, द रोल दैट द मदर प्लेज in motivating a daughter to live and rise above the debasing sentimentality. जो ये फालतू की भावनाएं हैं, यानी जिन भावनाओं में बेकार में रहकर वो बह रही है, she has to take control of it and then she has to look after Preeti. So in conclusion, it may be said that Preeti has been an inspirational force for the grandmother, and she infuses courage in grandmother and enables her to bring her daughter out of the prison of gloom and also of depression. That she is the one who brings her daughter out of the depression. It is because of her presence that she is able to get strength to fight the battle for the happiness of her daughter. Now it is the presence of Preeti which actually compels her to fight for the happiness of her daughter. Preeti turns out to be a ray of sunshine in a dark existence, and she is a source of great solace for her grandmother. कि बहुत राहत की सांस है प्रीति उसकी नानी के लिए, and she is really her beloved charioteer. यही उसकी सारथी है, उसकी बहुत ही प्रिय सारथी है. Thus it can be stated without any trace of doubt that the title of the story is very apt, suggestive and appropriate. Now in your exams there can be a question that who is the beloved charioteer, or you can also say you justify the title of the story. So these are the points that have to be discussed while answering this question. I hope this point is very clear to you. So you go through this lecture once again and try to understand it fully. So study well, and we'll meet in our next session. Goodbye.